KM3, Miss Jess here. I am going to get us started with our chapter book, and this one is called, as I mentioned earlier on our Google Meet, Junie B, First Grader Cheater Pants. And this book is written by Barbara Park. There are a few illustrations that are black and white, but I will make sure to show you those when they come up on my pages. Otherwise, just kind of settle into a cozy spot and get ready to listen to a story, a couple of chapters a day, about a first grader named Junie B. Think back, too, to when you were in first grade and if you might have encountered any of these things that we end up reading about. Our first chapter is called A plus May, and it starts with a journal entry. It says Monday. Dear first grade journal, yesterday was the weekend. The weekend is the nickname of Saturday and Sunday, only I don't know why. Those 2 days zoomed by speedy quick. That's how come I didn't have time to do my homework. Here's a little picture for us to look at before I read the next sentence. I think Junie B might be the girl with glasses. Excuse me. And I'm not sure what's going on next to her, but we will probably find out. That's how come I didn't have time to do my homework. 'Cause what do I look like? A clock or something? Last night I begged to stay up to do it, but Daddy said no, and he turned out my light. That was not helpful. Now I am at school, and Mr. Scary said to please take out our homework. I feel sickish inside. I hope that Daddy is proud of himself. From Junie B, first grader. Next to me, May got her homework out of her backpack, and she put it on her desk. She smoothed out her paper and smiled. I'm sure I'll get another A+ on this one. I get an A+ on all my homework papers, Junie Jones, she said. One time, my paper and my homework was so perfect, Mr. Scary sent a happy note home to my mom and dad. I did a shrug. Blah, 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 I said back. May did a mad face at me. Then she quick tapped Lenny on the back of his head. Lenny, did you hear what I just said to Junie Jones? She asked. I told her that I always get A+ on my homework. Lenny turned around. Please don't touch my hair, May, he said. I used my brand new gel to spike it today, and I don't want you messing it up. I waved at Lenny across the aisle. I would never touch your hair, Leonard, I said. Your hair looks like an interesting glob of artwork, almost. And artwork should just be gawked at. Lenny nodded. Thank you, Junie B. Jones. You're welcome, Lenny, whose last name starts with an S, I think, I said. After that, I smiled at May, very smuggy. Lenny likes me way better than he likes her. May squinted her eyes at me. How come you didn't take your homework out yet, Junie Jones? She asked. You're not following directions very well this morning, are you? I did a big breath. Then I quick reached into my backpack, and I pulled out a rumpled paper, and I pretended it was my homework. There, I said, there's my homework. Now, please mind your own beeswax, you snoopy pooper, May. May's face got reddish and flushy. She started to raise her hand to Tattletale. Only just then, the teacher called her name. May, it's your day to take the attendance sheet to the office, he said. Would you like to come up here and get it, please? Yes, she said, I would love to, Mr. Scary. The attendance sheet is when teachers send the names of the absent children to the office. I do not actually approve of that practice. May hurried to the front of the room. I'm never absent, Mr. Scary, she said. I'm always here. Have you ever noticed that, huh? Have you ever noticed how I'm always here? Mr. Scary closed his eyes for a second. Oh, yes, May, he said. Believe me, I've noticed. May did a giggle. Also, I'm always punctual, she said. Have you noticed that too? I am always punctual. Have you noticed how punctual I am? She smiled at the class. Punctual means on time, everyone, she explained. Last year I was so punctual. I got the Punctual Award. The Punctual Award is an award for the child who is the most punctual. Mr. Scary stared at her. He said to please stop saying punctual. After that, May took the attendance sheet and she skipped to the door. Don't worry, room 1. I will get this attendance sheet to the office all safe and sound, she said real loud. Then everyone who isn't here will get reported to the principal, and that's exactly what they deserve. Mr. Scary did a sigh. Please, May, just go, okay? He said. May did with a wave. And then she hurried out the door. After she was gone, I roamed my eyes around the room. All of the children had their homework papers out except me. My insides felt sickish again, because pretty soon Mr. Scary would find out that I didn't do my assignment. I swallowed real hard. My eyes kept roaming around. And then, what do you know? They roamed over to May's desk, and surprise, surprise, I saw her homework paper sitting right there. It was out in plain view, I mean. My heart pounded and pounded at that sight because my brain was getting at an idea. That's why I tapped on my chin, very thinking. Then, quiet as a mouse, I pulled May's paper a little bit closer, and I copied what it said. After I got done, I breathed in relief, because now I had a homework paper. I smiled to myself, then I closed my eyes, and I whispered, thank you, to May for letting me borrow her homework. It's the end of that chapter. Did May let her borrow her homework? I'm just curious if you think that May let her borrow her homework. Or did May just leave her paper out there and Junie B. Jones cheated and stole what May had done for her homework? Something to think about. Chapter 2, Weekend Fun. May got back from the office. She stood at the door and waved again. I did it, everyone! I got the attendance sheet to the office just like I promised. She looked at Mr. Scary. It went very well, too, she said. There were no problems I couldn't handle. Mr. Scary raised his eyes from what he was doing. Okay, well, thank you, May. You can take your seat now, please, he said. But May kept right on talking. At first, I didn't know where to put it, but then the secretary told me to put it in the wire basket, so I followed her directions perfectly, she said. Mr. Scary pointed at her seat. Excellent, he said. Now, please sit down, okay? May didn't pay attention again. When I was in kindergarten, I got an E+ for following directions, she said. E is better than excellent. E+ is better than excellent. The plus sign means extra, extra excellent. Just then, Mr. Scary stood up, and he took May's hand, and he walked her to her seat. As soon as he went back to his desk, I strained my brain for something nice to say to her, because I was still happy at May for leaving her homework out. Finally, I tapped on her arm, and I smiled. Welcome back, madam, I said, real friendly. May did a frown at me. Kind of a crack was that, she said. I just looked at her. Friendly does not come natural to us, I think. Pretty soon, Mr. Scary stood up at his desk. Then he walked to the board, and he wrote these words. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was... This weekend, one thing I did for fun was... Okay, everyone, he said. For your homework over the weekend, I asked you to complete this sentence, remember? Room 1 nodded. Good, said Mr. Scary, because this morning I'd like for each of you to read your homework paper to the class. That way we'll find out what our classmates do for enjoyment. Doesn't that sound like fun? Room 1 nodded again. Even if it doesn't sound fun, you still have to nod. Mr. Scary smiled. We'll go up and down each row until everyone gets a turn. He pointed at Lucille. Lucille, why don't you start us off, he said. Lucille sits in the first row by the window. Last year, me and her were bestest friends, but this year we're just regular. Lucille stood up and fluffed herself. Then she picked up her paper and she started to read. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was my Richie Nana took me to her expensive beauty salon, and both of us got manicures and pedicures. Mr. Scary looked surprised at that news. You got a pedicure, Lucille? Wow, that's pretty fancy stuff, isn't it? He said. Lucille shrugged. For some people, maybe, she said. She looked down and kept on reading. Also, we each got a papaya fruit facial, and Nana got an herbal body wrap. Plus, I got a seaweed scalp massage. Mr. Scary stood there for a second. Then he nodded very slow. Alrighty then, he said. After that, he pointed to Camille. Camille is the sister of Chenille. Those two are twin sets. Camille stood up. This weekend, Chenille and I made a puppet theater out of a cardboard box, and we put on a show for our little brother, Neil. Mr. Scary beamed at that news. Oh, that's great, girls, he said. I bet doing a puppet show for your brother was a lot of fun, wasn't it? Not really, said Camille. Neil kept on grabbing the puppets off our hands, and he made them kill each other. We don't like Neil, said Chenille. Neil is a boob, said Camille. Mr. Scary just stood there some more, and then finally he moved on to Roger. Roger was the best one so far. This weekend, one thing I did for fun was I went to get pizza with my dad, and I ate a whole entire anchovy, and I didn't throw up till I was almost home. Room 1 clapped and clapped for that amazing story. Mr. Scary was right. It was fun to learn what our classmates did on the weekend. I couldn't wait for it to be my turn. 'Cause I love to talk in front of the class, of course. Plus, all I had to do was tell about my weekend, and Mr. Scary would think I had done my homework. I put the paper I copied from May into my desk. I didn't need it after all. 'Cause what do you know? Today, I lucked out. There's our final picture. And that's the end of our second chapter. Next, we will start with chapter 3. It's called Twitching. And I will read that to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.